So the Triumph Spit-6 is back. The owner has decided that the steering is not too heavy, but still just a little too sensitive. So we're going to be dialing a little bit of caster into it. And he wants us to adjust the exhaust system. Now, I don't know if I said it in the previous video, but the exhaust system is not hung quite right. And he thought he was going to be able to live with it maybe till fall. But then he was scraping it on some speed bumps and decided to take care of it before he rips it off. Let's get underneath there and I'll show you what we got going on. So whoever hung this exhaust system for the previous owner had actually cut the pipe right here and twisted this and re-welded it back together. I don't know exactly why, because that ended up pulling this down some and pulled this over, so it's no longer centered down here like it's supposed to be. And they ended up dragging this on a big speed bump at a gas station not too long ago. And ever since then, they've dragged it several times. And that's because it broke both of these hangers that were holding it together there, making it hang a lot lower. But as it sits now, you try to push it on up, it takes quite a bit of pressure to get it in place. So that means these hangers had a lot of pressure on them all the time the way the system was hung. So we're going to go ahead and take everything apart, at least probably from here back, take the back half off, maybe take this off as well, but we'll have to see. That can be a lot easier said than done depending on how hard these were clamped. And we'll start from there, try to get this centered up where it's supposed to be and tucked up in there. Then get this hung the way we want it and connect those dots. So starting with the header here, the header, believe it or not, aftermarket header didn't fit. Yay! Pretty normal, but it was actually a lot further over to the passenger side and hanging further down. We've been working on it to try to get it to get centered and set a lot higher. I want it up, about right there. And so we're heating it up, putting some pressure on it, letting it cool down. And we actually had tried to take video of this the way it was before we started, but we didn't have any sound, so you're getting to see it about 2/3 of the way through the process. So we're going to continue working on that, try to get it where we want it, and then we'll move forward with the rest of the exhaust. All right, so we got the header now to where it actually is falling in the center here, and it's up high enough, so it's where we want it. We had to do a bit of heating on some strategic spots throughout here and hold tension up and over while it cools. But after a couple of times, we got it where we want it now. So now the center resonator actually sits where we want it, right down the middle and tucked up in there. But now we got to figure out from here back, because it seems like the angle of this isn't quite right the way it's sitting now. And of course we can play with that a little bit on height, but we don't want to drop it too much. So I got to figure out how to get this connected to here properly. But one of the other issues, I think, and this partly comes down to just how great these systems are anymore, and partly as to how it was originally installed. I think this whole Y pipe needs to slide forward a little bit so that the portions of these line up here pretty well so that the clamps or the hangers fit a lot nicer. And then that would mean we would have to extend these pipes, the ends of these pipes. But if we did that, that would actually help us because we can actually put a slight bend in it then. And these mufflers, I think, need to go back just a hair because right now they're even when the tips are even with the license plate and it's smoking up the license plate. So I think it needs to go slightly past the license plate and be a little less flat here. So if we reposition that and readjust these hangers, we can get to sit in a better spot adjust this angle and get everything sitting a lot nicer. Because without this being angled up a little bit, you can actually catch the mufflers here, the corners of the mufflers on the ground in certain instances, which there are a few scrapes there now. So bringing that up a little bit would make it neater, tidier, and less prone to bottoming out. So it's just a matter of thinking about it for a few more minutes, working on each piece until we get it where we want it. A little bit more than I was hoping to have to do to it, but that's what it really needs to be right. So now we got it so that the resonator is sitting straight down the tunnel here like it's supposed to be, and it's not sitting any lower here than it is here. So it's tucked up in as good as we're going to get it to be. And I cut off that little jog that took this thing down lower. Once I got this position to here, then the Y pipe here just was not fitting at all here. The very end of this had been clamped a couple times with clamps and was not going to slide over a new piece of pipe. And the angle of it was just wrong. It wouldn't sit where we wanted it. So I found it personally easier just to whack that right off and get the end of a pipe adapter to put on here for clamping it and get it at the angle I really wanted it at. So then I was able to get it nice and tucked up, nice and tight here, and I got some new clamps or new hangers here, and I got them so where they would twist and sit a little bit nicer on here. They're still the same basic style of clamp of just a universal hanger that was on there before, but instead of just having one rivet going through one hole, it's got two rivets here and a bigger piece of metal. So I twisted the metal rather than letting the rubber twist to hold this, and I got it so that we're one hole higher. So the distance between those holes is about 7/8 of an inch. So now all of this is up, almost an inch closer to the car right in this area than it was before these hangers broke. And then instead of having these things hanging straight down like they were before, which was the ends of these U-bolts that were catching on everything, we're going to turn these things up that way. So now I've been starting to work on these hangers here, trying to get these things to sit where I want them to be a little higher and a bit of an angle up rather than hanging straight back. Because if they're hanging straight back, that's when they're going to bang on stuff. And that's pretty much how it was set up before. And we get it to where it's just a little past the license plate here. And what I'll do is I'll get like a piece of wood or something clamped across here to get both tips to where they're sitting exactly the same across here, square and straight with each other, and get them centered on the license plate, and then figure out what needs to change to make sure that this Y pipe on each side lines up to the mufflers, which we can see that obviously this is going straight, and at some point it has to do a little bit of a curve to actually meet that. And then once I get this figured out, it's just a matter of probably adding a little bit of length here so they go inside here so they can be clamped properly, or weld them on. That's another option. That way they can't move and twist and end up being off later. And then it's just a matter of finishing welding everything up. Take it all off. We'll paint it all in a high heat black to match what it was here before. Then I can reassemble it, clamp it all up, and exhaust will be done. So here's the exhaust as it's finished. Ended up just a hair off center by the time everything got final welded in position, but that is pretty darn close to centered anyway. All my clamps are turned sideways. It's all painted with high heat paint, so it's all looking the same. And I do believe that we've got pretty decently straight across there. Now these things are not exactly even and straight. Even these here, even the pairs aren't exactly even with each other, so kind of did the best we could. So now all I gotta do is double check my caster after putting some shims in it. is we went ahead and added some shims right here on both sides. Double check that. And as long as it looks good and test drive's okay, it's done.